Dust clung to her lashes as the wagon wheels screeched to a halt. Her father's hand was iron on her arm, dragging her down from the plank seat. She stumbled into gravel, knees stinging where stones tore skin. "Walk," he said. The word cut harder than the stones. His voice was flat, like the wind scraping through dry corn stalks. Her mother stayed on the wagon bench, eyes lowered, hands clutched to her apron. The older brothers didn't come. None of the neighbors had followed. It was a quiet banishment, meant to be forgotten before supper. She stood, dusting blood from her palms. Ahead stretched nothing but wide earth, a horizon wavering in heat, the spine of canyon ridges fading into blue haze. Behind her, the field still glistened faint with morning dew, safe and fenced. Her father climbed back on the wagon without looking at her. "You'll find your own way." The reins cracked. Hooves thundered, then dwindled. The wagon shrank into distance until only the trail of dust remained. Silence pressed close. A buzzard circled high above. She turned in a slow circle, skirts heavy with dust. The road forked, one path bending toward the river, another threading into dry hills. No signpost, no promise of shelter. Her throat tightened, but no tears came. Even grief had been burned out of her these past months, hollowing her until she was nothing more than skin stretched over bone. She walked. The sun rose higher, spilling heat across the plain. Her boots pinched at the toes, soles thinning. Each step stirred dust that clung to her hem. She kept to the river path, though it soon dwindled to a dry creek bed. The air shimmered. Cicadas whirred. By noon, her lips cracked. She dropped to her knees in the creek bed, pressing her face to damp clay where a trickle of water seeped. The mud tasted bitter, but it eased her throat. When she lifted her head, coyotes watched from the ridge. Their yellow eyes glimmered, tails swishing. She gripped a stone, the only weapon at hand. "Go on," she rasped. They lingered until a gust scattered dust across the ridge. Then they slunk away. Night fell. She huddled beneath a mesquite tree, wrapping her shawl tight. Stars burned fierce in the open sky, and coyotes howled again, closer now. Sleep came in ragged breaths, broken by dreams of her mother's hands trembling on that apron, of her father's voice repeating the word Barren like a curse. By dawn, her stomach cramped with hunger. She rose stiffly, following the trail toward the canyon spine. Rock walls loomed high, painted red with morning light. Ravens wheeled overhead. Her legs shook, but she kept walking. By the third day, blisters broke open on her heels. She tore strips from her petticoat to bind them. She found prickly pears near the rocks and chewed their bitter flesh. Thorns lodged in her fingers, but the fruit gave her strength. On the fourth night, wolves came. She heard them first, low growls patting the darkness, the children of silence. Her heart hammered. She rose, gripping her stone again, then found a broken branch nearby. She lit it from her tiny fire, holding the flame high. Shadows danced across the canyon walls. Yellow eyes flickered closer. She swung the branch, sparks scattering into black. The wolves backed, circling, then vanished into the night. Smoke stung her eyes. Her breath came ragged. But she did not cry. She walked on. By the week's end, the trail widened into scrub plains. In the distance, a fence cut across the land, silver wire glinting in sun. Beyond it, cattle grazed. A house crouched near the rise, roof patched with tin, smoke curling from a chimney. She leaned on the fence, shoulders shaking. Then a shout split the air. "Get back from there!" Her head snapped up. A man strode from the barn, rifle slung across his shoulder. He was tall, shoulders bent from years of work, beard streaked with dust and gray. 5 children trailed behind him, peering wide-eyed. A boy nearly grown, 2 girls with braids, twin boys clinging together. The smallest carried a rag doll missing an arm. She raised her hands slowly, palms open. "I mean no harm." The man studied her, eyes narrowed against the sun. The rifle lowered but did not vanish. "You lost." Her lips cracked as she answered, voice little more than a rasp. "Thrown away?" The words hung heavy, heavier than gunmetal. The oldest boy whispered, "Pa!" She's bleeding. The man's gaze swept over her. Torn hem, raw feet, bloody palms, face pale with thirst. A muscle tightened in his jaw. He jerked his head toward the well near the porch. Water's there. Take it. She stumbled forward, drew the bucket, drank until her belly ached. The cold cut through her, fierce as mercy. She wiped her mouth with the back of her hand and turned. The man was still watching. Children pressed close behind him. "What's your name?" he asked. She hesitated. Names felt dangerous now, too easily forgotten. At last she whispered it. His eyes softened, if only a fraction. "Storm's coming," he said. "You'll need shelter." She shook her head. "I won't trouble you. You already have." The words weren't cruel. They were simple fact, like rain or dust. He lifted the rifle onto his shoulder and turned back toward the barn. The children lingered a moment longer, eyes curious, before scattering after him. She stood in the yard, trembling. Behind her stretched the endless road where no wagon waited, no king called her name. Ahead was a house weathered by storms, windows glowing faint with lamplight. The buzzer still circled high above, its shadow crossing the ground at her feet. But for the first time in days, she didn't flinch. The girl with the braids darted past, arms full of shirts that needed mending. She stumbled when the baby's wails cut sharper, her eyes flicking toward the stranger, the woman who had come out of the desert 3 nights ago and stayed by the porch as though afraid of crossing its shadow. The cowboy lifted the baby, pressing her against his chest. His hand dwarfed her back. "Hush now," he muttered, but the crying only grew. The woman stepped forward. "Let me?" The yard went still. Even the calves stilled their bawling, as if waiting for his answer. His jaw worked. At last, he held the child out. She took the baby with hands both steady and gentle, rocking with a rhythm born not of motherhood but survival, the kind that lulls hunger and stills fear. Slowly, the wails melted into hiccups. The children stared. The cowboy turned back to his hinge, hammer blows ringing like shots in the heat. That evening, thunderheads gathered. The wind slammed the shutters and rattled the tin roof. Rain hissed across the dry ground, flooding gullies in minutes. The family huddled inside, lamplight flickering. The woman moved with quiet purpose, patching leaks with old rags, feeding the fire when smoke curled too low. The cowboy sat at the table sharpening his knife, eyes fixed on her. His eldest son leaned near, whispering, "Pa, she don't look like trouble." "She looks like the storm carried her here," the cowboy said. Outside, lightning split the horizon. The little ones flinched. She drew them close, telling a story of her grandmother's loom, of how each thread strengthened the cloth. Her voice rose steady against the storm, and for a moment, even the thunder seemed to listen. The cowboy set down his knife. By morning, the storm was gone. The land steamed beneath a rising sun. Cattle lowed in the distance, restless. The cowboy rode out with his eldest, rifle across his saddle. The woman stayed behind, tending the fire, braiding the girl's hair, teaching the twins to sweep the floor with makeshift brooms of sagebrush. When the riders returned near dusk, dust clung to their clothes, and their faces carried a shadow deeper than weariness. Rustlers, the cowboy said, dismounting heavy. Tracks cut through the south fence. They took 3 head. The eldest slammed his fist into the fence post. "We can take them back." The cowboy's gaze hardened. "And draw blood? That road don't end clean." His son glared, anger rising like the sun at noon. The boy had his father's fire, but none of his restraint. The woman saw it. She said nothing, only fetched water, only watched. That night the cowboy lay awake on the porch, boots planted, rifle across his knees. Coyotes yipped across the plain. His thoughts were louder, a vow made years ago, kneeling beside his wife's body, that he'd never draw again. His trigger finger twitched in memory of the last man he shot. His jaw clenched. Inside, he heard the woman's voice low and steady, coaxing the children toward sleep. Days passed. The ranch wore on them all. Fence lines sagged, cattle strayed, wolves circled. The boy grew sharper, defiance in every movement. The twins broke more than they mended. The girl clung to the stranger as though she were anchor in a shifting sea. The cowboy bore it all in silence. his back bent with work, his eyes shadowed with unshed grief. At night, he drank black coffee instead of sleep, watching the horizon. The woman did not leave. She gathered eggs, mended clothes, patched roofs. When food ran thin, she foraged prickly pear and boiled wild roots. When the little ones fought, she turned quarrels into chores. The house began to smell less of dust and more bread. Still, whispers ran through the town. She heard them when she walked with the girl for supplies. "That Barren one," muttered a woman near the mercantile. "Curse follows her," another spat. She kept her eyes on the ground, but the girl's small hand tightened around hers. When they returned, the cowboy waited on the porch, eyes narrowing at the way she carried her shoulders. He didn't ask. He didn't need to. Instead, he set an extra plate on the table that night, and when the eldest son sneered, "She ain't one of us," the cowboy's voice cracked like a whip. "She's here. That's enough." The boy fell silent. The woman lowered her eyes, hiding the flicker in them, not of shame, but of something fiercer, something taking root. One evening, the rustlers rode into town. Their laughter spilled out of the saloon, sharp and cruel. Men turned their eyes away, choosing silence over justice. The cowboy stood at the edge of the street, jaw clenched, fists tight. His rifle leaned against his horse, untouched. He watched them drink, gamble, boast of land they would soon claim. The woman stood across the road, arms full of flour and beans. She saw the tremor in his hand, the war in his face. He felt her gaze, steady as the desert stars. He turned away, but her eyes did not. That night, as the lamps burned low, the children slept and the plains lay silent, the cowboy spoke. "You ought to know what I was." His voice was low, carrying more weight than thunder. She sat across the table, mending one of the twins' shirts, needle flashing. He stared past her into memory. "I drew faster than most, killed more than I'll ever name. When my wife died, I swore the ground would never drink another life by my hand." The needle stilled. His voice cracked. "Now they come for the land, for my children, and I'll keep my vow even if it breaks me." The silence that followed was deep as a canyon. The only sound was the ticking of the clock, steady as a heartbeat. "At last," she said softly, "not all battles are yours alone." He looked up then. The lamplight caught her eyes, steady, unflinching, eyes that had stared down wolves in the dark. The woman raised a rifle. Her arms trembled, but her eyes steadied. She fired. The crack split the night. A rustler yelped, clutching his arm, the others scattering into the dark. The twins clung to her skirts, their small fingers digging bruises into her legs. "Inside!" she barked, voice raw. "All of you." The girl dragged the baby into the house. The eldest boy hesitated, eyes blazing. "Now!" she snapped. He obeyed. Smoke clawed her throat. She coughed, eyes streaming. Another rider fired back, bullets tearing through the porch rail. She crouched low, pulling the children down with her, heart pounding against her ribs. The cowboy burst from the house, revolver in hand. His face was carved with fury and fear. He fired 2 shots into the dark, the riders scattering with stolen cattle. Hooves thundered down the gulch until only the crackle of burning wood remained. The cowboy stood, chest heaving, revolver smoking. Then he froze, staring at the weapon in his hand as though it had betrayed him. Slowly, he lowered it, his jaw tightening. The woman rose, rifle still clutched, eyes never leaving the horizon. The fire lit her face in orange and gold, sweat streaking the soot. She did not tremble now. By dawn, the barn was a black skeleton. Smoke curled from the ruins, and the cattle yard lay half empty. The children clung together on the porch, their faces gray with ash. The cowboy hauled buckets from the well, dousing what flames remained. His eldest worked beside him, though anger radiated from every movement. "Town won't help," the boy muttered. "They never do." The cowboy said nothing. His silence was heavier than words. The woman moved among the children, pressing wet cloths to their faces, wiping soot from their hair. Her hands were steady, her gaze sharper than the wind cutting across the plains. The girl whispered, "Why won't anyone stop them? The woman had no answer. She only looked toward the horizon, where dust still hung in the air from the night's raid. Later that day, they rode into town. The saloon doors swung wide with laughter and music. The rustlers' horses tied brazenly to the post. Men on the boardwalk kept their eyes low, boots scuffing the planks. No one spoke. The cowboy stood in the street, hat low, fist tight. He did not touch the revolver at his side. The woman stood beside him, rifle slung across her back, skirt stiff with soot. "Sheriff will do nothing," a shopkeeper whispered, slipping inside. "Best leave it be." The cowboy's elder spat in the dust. "Cowards." The cowboy's face was stone, unreadable. He turned his children back toward their wagon. The woman did not move at first, her gaze fixed on the saloon doors. When she finally turned, her eyes carried the fire of the barn. That night, the ranch sat in uneasy silence. The twins lay restless, the baby whimpered, and even the eldest kept pacing the floor. The cowboy sat at the table, head bowed, his hands clenched around a coffee tin he did not drink from. The woman cleaned the rifle, laying each bullet out like prayer beads. The boy broke first. "We can't just let them. They'll come again." The cowboy's eyes lifted, dark as storm clouds. "You don't know the weight of a man's blood." "I know the weight of doing nothing," the boy snapped. The silence that followed was jagged. The woman slid the last bullet into place. "He's right." The cowboy turned on her, voice low, dangerous. "I swore never again." Her gaze held his. "And I swore to live." That vow means fighting when wolves circle the door. He flinched as though struck. The firelight flickered across her face. The children stared at her, wide-eyed. She set the rifle aside, hands steady. "I can shoot," she said simply. The cowboy's breath caught. The eldest leaned forward. "You can." She nodded. "My grandfather taught me. Said patience and breath make a truer shot than speed ever could. Said women don't waste bullets like men." Her lips tightened. No one cared to remember. The cowboy studied her as though seeing her for the first time. The next morning, the woman led the children into the yard. She set tin cans along the fence, showed the eldest how to steady his hand, guided the twins with slingshots made from willow and leather. The girl fetched rocks, her braids whipping in the wind. "Hold your breath," the woman said. "Let the world go still. Then let it go." The rifle cracked. The gun spun off the post, dust flying. The children gasped, eyes wide with awe. From the barn's blackened shell, the cowboy watched. His shadow stretched long across the ground, silent. By evening, they had snares set along the fence line, sharpened tools by the door, buckets filled at the ready. The yard looked less like a homestead and more like a fort. The cowboy walked the perimeter alone, hand brushing the fence posts. His vow weighed heavier than ever, but the sight of her teaching his children burned into him. A barren woman, they called her, but here she was, planting seeds of defiance, roots of survival. The wind carried a sound then, distant hooves, faint laughter. He froze, every muscle coiled. The storm was coming again, and this time it would not pass them by. The woman stepped onto the porch, rifle in hand, eyes scanning the horizon. The cowboy met her gaze. Neither spoke. The silence between them said enough. Somewhere out there, rustlers rode with stolen cattle and fire in their saddlebags. Somewhere out there, death drew nearer. The woman lifted her chin. Let them come. Dust boiled behind them. A dozen shadows cresting the ridge, rifles glinting in the sun. Their laughter carried across the plain, sharp as broken glass. The children pressed against the porch rail. The woman stood before them, rifle steady in her hands. The cowboy walked from the barn, revolver hanging loose at his side. His steps were slow, deliberate, as though the earth itself weighed him down. The rustlers fanned out, circling. Their leader rode to front, a red scarf masking his mouth. His eyes gleamed above it, mocking. "You got no barn. Half your herds are already," he called. "Time you packed up and left this land." The cowboy didn't answer. His silence was stone. The leader laughed, spitting into the dirt. "Or maybe we burn the house this time. See how long you last then." The children gasped. The woman raised a rifle. Sight trained on his chest. The laughter died. "You best lower that, girl," the leader sneered. "Ain't no woman born can hold steady on a shot that far." Her breath slowed. Her finger pressed a trigger. The rifle cracked. Thunder in the still air. The leader's hat flew from his head. Crown split clean. His horse reared, nearly throwing him. His men shouted, cursing, wheeling in shock. Smoke curled from her barrel. Her stance never faltered. The cowboy's eyes flicked to her, unreadable. Gunfire erupted. Bullets shredded the fence. Splinters raining across the yard. The children screamed. The twins hurled rocks from their slings. Striking a rider's shoulder, another's horse. The eldest boy ducked behind the trough, firing his small rifle with clenched jaw. The cowboy moved at last. His revolver barked, clean and fast, two men toppling from their saddles. He stood tall in the yard, every motion precise, deadly. The vow he had carried shattered in the smoke. But the rustlers kept coming. The woman fired again, dropping another. She reloaded with hands swift and calm, as though she had waited her whole life for this moment. Bullets hissed past her, one tearing her sleeve, another grazing the porch beam above her head. She did not flinch. The leader roared, spurring his horse forward. His men followed, a wave of steel and dust. "Inside," she shouted. The children scrambled, dragging the baby through the door. The eldest hesitated, rifle in hand. She met his eyes. "Go." The door slammed shut. The woman stepped into the yard. Her skirt whipped in the wind, boots sinking into dust. She leveled her rifle, breath steady. The cowboy joined her, revolver smoking. Side by side they stood, outnumbered and unyielding. The clash was thunder and smoke. Horses screamed, men cursed, bullets tore through air thick with dust. The woman dropped one, then another, each shot precise, each strike a hammer of fate. The cowboy's revolver spun, fire leaping from the muzzle, bodies at the ground. The dust drank blood. Still the leader pressed forward, his rifle spitting fire. A bullet grazed the cowboy's shoulder. He staggered, teeth clenched against the pain. Another round splintered the post beside the woman, shards cutting her cheek. She didn't falter. Her last shot rang out. The leader jerked in the saddle, rifle flying from his grip. His horse bolted, dragging him down the ridge in a storm of dust and curses. The others broke. Panic swept them. Horses reared, men scattered, fleeing into the canyons with the screams of the defeated. Silence fell. Only the wind moved, stirring ash from the barn's bones, lifting the smell of gunpowder into the noon sun. The woman lowered the rifle. Her hands were steady still, though her breath came hard. The cowboy stood beside her, blood staining his shirt, revolver limp in his grip. His eyes met hers, shadowed with something between awe and sorrow. The porch door creaked. The children spilled out, faces pale, eyes wide. They stared at the bodies in the dust, at the smoke curling from their guardians' guns. The eldest boy whispered, "Pa, she saved us." The cowboy's gaze lingered on the woman. Slowly, he nodded. She did. By evening, the yard was quiet. The dead were gone, the cattle gathered, the fire doused. The horizon burned gold with sunset, the land washed clean by silence. The children clung to the woman, pressing against her skirts as though afraid she might vanish with the light. She smoothed their hair, her hands gentle, her eyes far away. The cowboy stood on the porch, hat in hand, watching her. "They'll speak of this," he said at last. Her lips curved, faint as dusk. "Then let them." Years later, the story lingered in whispers across the frontier. They said she was barren, cast out, a woman with nothing. Yet when the land burned and wolves came howling, it was her hands that steadied the rifle, her breath that carried the shot, her courage that turned children into a family and a ranch into a fortress. And some swore that if you stood at that canyon edge at sundown, you could still hear the crack of her rifle, echoing across the dust, the sound of a vow remade, a legend born.